All right, everybody. This is lesson 7 of the Zero to Hero mentorship program. We are on our third session this time with friends and heroes in the industry here talking about Power Automate. Sorry, my mind is a little foggy. I just came back from Houston from the community summit, so don't mind me if I look a little sleepy. Today we have my friend and hero here, Elaiza Benitez. She will continue the saga of lecturing us on Power Automate and showing all kinds of special power here. And without further ado, Elaiza, the floor is yours. Take it away. And thank you so much for taking the time and preparing lessons for us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. Hey everyone, I'm Eliza, and today I'm going to be showing you how you can automate insurance forms with AI Builder and Power Automate. Oh, my mouse not working. So, just a little bit about me before we start. I live in the capital city of New Zealand. I've been a consultant for over 10 years now, and I'm a Microsoft MVP in business applications. And in my spare time, you can find me in the kitchen or biking alongside the river. So I started with my journey with the Power Platform in 2018. And since then, I've fallen deeply in love with Power Automate and now AI Builder. So that's what I'm going to be showing you today. And for the agenda, I'm first going to talk about what AI Builder is, followed by the prerequisites, what the use case is, so that you yourself can understand how you can get started with AI Builder and get ideas of how you can use it in your organization. And then I'm going to show you the demo, so how you would build your AI Builder model, and then how you can use it in Power Automate with Cloud Flows. Then I'm going to share some learning materials so that you can go away and learn this yourself. And then we're going to open up the floor to questions. All right, so let's get started. AI Builder. If you haven't come across AI Builder before, there are different AI Builder models that you can use. So on the screen, we can see that there's 5, and the one that I'm going through today is what we call form processing. Now, the cool thing about AI Builder is that it allows you to do different cool things with processes within your organization. And what I mean by different cool things is that you can either train a model to detect objects from within an image. So that's what we call object detection, which is this one over here. Or you can have something like prediction. So you can predict when something is going to happen based on the data that you're feeding the model and training it in. And then we have another type of model called category classification. So in other words, it's able to take a look at text and then recognize what that text is. So there's a lot of different AI builder models. So then the next question that you're probably thinking is, well, why should I use it? And I want to talk about the second bullet point in this slide. So when I say turnkey solution, it's basically something that you can click and set up. So when I say click, it's just you're clicking away on your mouse. So in other words, you don't need to have a background in programming or software development or be a data scientist. This is something that you can configure yourselves today as a citizen developer or a pro code developer. No matter what level of experience you have, you can go and essentially create your own AI builder model straight away and use it immediately with Power Automate. So in terms of doing some automation with it, or with Power Apps. So if you build a Canvas app, you can use your model in there as well. And that's one of the really big benefits of AI Builder is that it enables you to do some automation that you never have dreamt of before. Like this is seriously cool tech that we live in today. And that's why I'm really excited to share this with you all today. So in the middle or bottom middle of the screen, there's a QR code that you can scan. And when you scan that, it's going to take you to the official docs.microsoft.com site that's going to talk about the different aspects of AI Builder. Okay, so in terms of the prerequisites, what do you need in order to get started with AI Builder, to get hands-on experience with AI Builder? There's pretty much three things that you need to have. So the first one is a Dataverse environment. The reason why you need a Dataverse environment is that's where the data is essentially going to be stored in terms of the analytics that it's going to perform when it's going to pick up and scan the form that you're going to process. It's going to be Dataverse is the place where the data is going to be stored when the AI Builder form processing model analyzes the form, extracts the data. And then in terms of the user licenses, you need either one of these three, so either Power Apps, Power Automate, or a Dynamics 365 enterprise license. And then you also need an AI Builder capacity add-on. So if you're an admin in your Dataverse environment, essentially what you can do is allocate the capacity to that Dataverse environment. And to help you understand how much capacity add-on you need, they have created what they call the AI Builder calculator. So in here, I've got a screenshot of the form processing AI Builder model. So in here is where you can enter how many forms you think, pages in a form you think you're going to process per month, and then it's going to give you an estimate. So again, keeping all of this in mind, that this is to provide capabilities for organizations out there to do some AI automation. And so there is a cost associated to it. Otherwise, we would have to lean on very, very, very smart people who could do this for us. But with AI Builder, again, it's just a point and click experience, which is what you're going to learn about today. Okay, so for the use case, what are we using AI Builder with today? So the use case is, pretend we are in an insurance organization. So as an insurance organization, we've got members. So our members can be organizations, they can be individuals. And when it comes to it, they will take out a claim against their insurance policy that they have with the insurance organization. So the use case that we're going to go through today is as a claims assessor. So that's me working in an insurance organization. So when I receive a claim form, I need to be able to upload it to our document repository so that I could see the claims information in our policy administration system. So with the last bit of this use case, the bit where it says so that I could see the claims information in our policy administration system, that's the AI Builder component where it's going to analyze the form that's been uploaded into SharePoint, and then it's going to go through the fields that you've trained as part of the model, and then it's going to extract that information and then pop it into Dataverse. And then the claims team can see that data from that claims form in the format of a model-driven app. Okay. So in terms of the end users, we have Christy, who is a claims advisor, and then we've got me, the administrator, who is essentially the citizen developer. All right, so let's get straight into it. All right, so I'm going to exit out of my PowerPoint, and I'm going to show you the form that we are going to be processing today. So this is what we call a liability claim form. This is typically used for businesses. So when an organization needs to submit a liability claim for their business, and this is a real life form. So this isn't something that I've made up. This is a real life insurance form. And this is one of the cool things about AI Builder as you're learning and playing with it, is you could essentially test it with anything. So this is a form that I grabbed online. And in terms of a claim form, it essentially has three parts to it. So the first one being the details of the member. And then the second part is usually what's the insurance policy this member has with the insurance organization. And then when it comes to the details of the actual claim that they're submitting. So in terms of the third party details, who else is involved in this insurance claim, and then things like the dates. And then you'll see in here that in this particular insurance form, there's also a table. So as a bonus learning point, today I'm going to also show you how you can process tables in AI Builder. So previously you could only process fields, but I think as of earlier this year, you can now process tables. So that's pretty cool. So you get to see that as well. And then, yeah, as you scroll down the claim form, there's going to be details of the nature of the claim, so the reason, the claim estimate, and then as we scroll down, there'll be further information. We've got another checkbox in here, and then, details about who is submitting the claim. So in terms of one of the upcoming features of AI Builder Model for the Wave 2 release is checkbox processing functionality. So this is something that the product team has been working on, and it doesn't stop at checkbox. It can also accept radio buttons. For the testing that I've done for this release, it's predominantly been on checkboxes. Now, if there was a cross in here as well, the AI Builder model is smart enough to pick that up. So it could either be a tick or a cross. Okay, so in terms of the form, this is essentially it. So now what we need to do is head over to our make.powerapps.com site and then go ahead and create the model. So that's what we'll do. Okay, so I'm in my other browser here, and what we're going to do is head over to AI Builder. So by default, it's going to be collapsed. So you just need to click on this downwards icon, and then it'll expand. And then you want to click on Build. So this screen that you're about to see is what I had earlier in my slide, where I showed you a range of the different models. And if you don't have AI Builder add-on, don't worry, you could still learn by adding a trial. So if you haven't added a trial, it's going to appear here on the top right. I think it says like get trial or start trial. And that's pretty much it. And then it'll tell you how many days and capacity you have left in your trial. So you can go and learn this after this session. So the model that we are using is form processing. Now, when we select any of the models in the AI Builder, we will see a wizard appear. And before I type in the name, I want to show you the different types of information that the product team has enabled as part of the experience when you're building your AI Builder model. So in the first tab, we have Get Started. And if we click along, it's going to tell us how we can go ahead and create our model and train it. In the second tab, we have Examples. So in the Examples tab is where it's going to list different types of I suppose, templates that you can use as part of creating your own AI Builder model. So this will be different styles of, I think, invoices or receipts. And then there's a link up here where if you click on it, it's going to take you to a web page where you could download the sample document so that you can learn yourself. And my favorite out of the three is best practices. So this essentially is going to tell you what you should do and shouldn't do when you're training your model. So with this first one, we'll just quickly go through this. It's pretty much saying group documents with the same layout inside a collection. And then it's saying don't use different documents with different layouts in the same collection. So a collection is essentially a way of grouping your different forms by different layouts so that you can train the model to understand the different types of layouts that it's going to come across, and so that it's trained where exactly in the form it needs to grab data for name, because something like the name field can be, let's say, in form A on the top left, but then in form B, it's in the middle. But by having different collections and you're training the AI Builder model, it's going to know magically where it needs to look for that name data every time it comes across different form layouts. It's really cool. Okay, so let me just head back to the first tab and let's just call this demo. And then we're going to go ahead and click create. So it's also going to tell you that you need at minimum 5 documents with the same layout when you go ahead and create an AI Builder model. That's so that it can train, learn, and understand where in the form it needs to look for the data. So in the first step, what it's going to prompt us to do is go ahead and create our fields. Now, with every application or app that you build, you kind of need to do some groundwork beforehand in terms of coming up with a list of defined fields. So my recommendation for all of you who are tuning in today is if this is something that you are going to use in your organization, make sure you do have a defined list of fields that you do want to extract from the form. So as an example, I have an Excel spreadsheet in here. I've got my list of defined fields, and then I've kind of told myself which ones are checkboxes. And then in a different color, I have fields that will represent the columns in that table. So you remember in the insurance form on page 2, there was a table that had a information on the claims history. So that's what this is. So once you have your list of defined fields, then it's going to be quite straightforward to go and create those fields in your AI builder model. So for example, if we start with name and I go back to my AI builder model and I click add, I can select field, I can just paste it in there, and then I can go ahead and do the same with the rest of my fields. So what I will show you next, I'll just create another field, is the checkbox functionality. So this is new, and what you're seeing is something ahead of the release. I believe it's going to be available later this month. So this is something that you can't do today yourselves, but I've got early access to it. So now when I select this particular option, it's going to tell me that this is a checkbox type of field that we're going to create. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this value in here. So you'll notice that in my list of fields, I have 2 fields that represent no and 1 that represents yes. So you're probably thinking, oh, should it not only be 1 field? So for example, like the declaration accepted. And the answer is yes. So let me just go back to this form. So typically when we work with checkbox fields, we usually only see 1 checkbox, right? But there are some use cases where, for whatever reason, the organization has decided to have 2 checkboxes that represent yes and 1 that represents no. Now, I don't know the reason behind this for this particular insurance company, but for this particular scenario, I made the decision, okay, well, they have yes and no checkboxes, even though technically it should only be 1 checkbox. So I've just added it in there as my defined list of fields. So you then pretty much go ahead and create all of your fields in there. So again, just to demonstrate, to add a checkbox, I click on add, I select checkbox, and then I could just paste it in there. Now for the table, to process tables in forms, you can select single page table. You also have the ability to add tables across multi-pages. So in other words, if your table overlays another page in the form, there's an option to select that as well, just not in this early access area that I have access to. So if I now type in claims history, so the reason, again, why we're doing this is if I just scroll down to page 2, we have a table in here. So we want to extract that data. So with AI Builder form processing, you have the ability to extract data from tables. Now, what I do want to show you is something that's really cool when we go ahead and analyze a form and train our model. So to enter the names for the columns, you simply select the column header, and then there'll be an option here to click the rename column, and then I can type in the name of the field, year of loss, and then we can have description. So as you can see, it's all pretty much a point and click experience, right? I don't have any programming language, and as you can see, it's pretty straightforward for me to easily create a table within my AI Builder form processing model. All right, so next what you do is you add all of your fields, but I'm not going to go through that. So I already have prepared one in advance. So when all of your fields are submitted, then you can go ahead with the next step. So the next step is when you create your collection and where you can upload your documents. Reminder, a minimum of 5 documents so that you can go ahead and train the model. So with my new collection, I'm going to call this claims forms. And then we're going to upload those 5 documents. The nice thing about AI Builder Model is that it doesn't restrict you to a single data source. You've got multiple data sources to choose from. I'm going to select local storage. So I have some forms ready that we're going to upload into my collection. And what's happening right now is that the AI Builder model is picking up those PDFs, and it's actually going to show you a thumbnail as well, which is pretty cool. So now I can upload the 5 documents, and then once those 5 documents have been uploaded against the collection, the next step is for us to draw on the form so that we can tag them so that the AI Builder form processing model knows where in the form it needs to extract the data from. So now when I click on Analyze, it's going to go ahead and go through all of those 5 documents, and then we'll be able to tag them. So we'll just give this a few minutes. And so just to recap, in terms of the insurance claim form, there's 3 pages, and when you're working with insurance claim forms, there's essentially 3 different pieces of data. The first one is the member, the second one is what is the insurance policy, and the third one is the nature of the claim. So when we extract the data, that's essentially the 3 different areas that we're going to be extracting and storing it into the relevant tables in Dataverse. So we'll just give this a few minutes. Okay, so while that's analyzing, I do want to go back to the insurance claim form and probably talk about like business etiquette when you're dealing with data. So the first one being is, so this is a real life form, but then when you want to translate it into a digital process, you have to think about where is my data currently stored, or what types of data do I already have today? So immediately when we take a look at this first page, we know that there's a policy number. So even though that we're asking the member to provide their policy type as well as the limit on their policy and the excess, essentially the member doesn't need to provide this information, because as long as we have the policy number and we have that information in our system, the member doesn't really need to provide this to us again, because we already have those details based on when they originally signed up with us for an insurance policy. The second one is things like the member number. So again, if I already have the member number, I already know who this business is, and I already know which branch they're insured with, as well as who their contact people are in this company who are authorized to make that claim. So it's things like that when you start to think about how do I digitize my forms, is again looking at the information that you already have today, as well as reducing the type of checks or logic that you need to apply. Okay, so let's go back to my form. All right, so the AI Builder has picked up the form, and as you can see, we now have 5 documents over here. So the reason why there's this orange circle or red circle is because I haven't tagged my fields, and until I see a tick, I'm good to go. So let's go ahead and tag my fields. So just to give you a bit of like a navigation walkthrough, in the middle is where it's going to show you the pages that it has analyzed and picked up from the form that you've submitted as part of that collection. And then over here on the right is the fields that we've defined in the first step. And this will allow us to tag the fields in the form. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, if I use my mouse, and as you can see, I'm dragging my mouse cursor over where I want to highlight the data, in other words, tag the data. And then once I've finished highlighting the data that I want to be tagged, we'll see an immediate like flyout window appear where I, as a citizen developer, can select the field. So now if I select name, it'll then tag it. And so we'll see this green tick. If there's things like a phone number And again, if I hover my mouse cursor over it, you'll see that it slightly changes color. It's blue. So now if I select that, again, it's going to automatically recognize the data that's within that field, and then I can tag it to a phone number. So this is really cool, right? So now let's go ahead and test it with a checkbox. So one of the checkboxes that I have in here is for this particular field. Let me just zoom in. And if I highlight over it, it's going to recognize that it is a checkbox, and then it's only going to show me fields that I've defined as a checkbox. So in other words, I'm not going to see the clutter of the fields or the tables that we've defined in step one. So now if I select this one, so this represents yes. And again, if we scroll all the way down, we'll see that it's been tagged correctly. So now if I repeat it with the second checkbox, again, it's recognized that this is a checkbox and I could tag it against the relevant field. That's pretty cool. Tell me that's pretty cool. Now, as I mentioned, I want to show you the table experience as well. So in terms of the table, all we need to do is highlight the area. So here I am, I've highlighted it. And then if I scroll all the way down, I have the option to select my table that I've defined in step one. So now when I click on claims history, this new kind of user experience appears. And then you've got a guide here to tell you how you can map the columns and the data together. So again, using my mouse, I'm just going to click here, and that'll represent row one. And then again, if I click here, that'll represent row two. And then if I select, what is it, control left click. So again, now it's switched it to columns. And again, if I do it for my currency value columns, it just maps it. So now to map it to the actual column, if I select A, I could select the year of loss, and then same with B, description. And as you can see, it's magically picking up that data immediately straight away. So you can see it in real time, how it's assessing as well as extracting that data. So now that I've mapped all of it, I can click done. And then that's pretty much it. And it's super cool. Like I can't imagine this tech exists. Like as someone who doesn't know programming, this is something that we can easily do today. So one of the other things that you can do is if that field value doesn't exist in the document, you have two options in here. You can select not available in document, or you could select not available in collection. So what I'll do is I'll quickly go through all of this so you can see this change from an orange circle to a tick. So we'll grab the email, we'll grab the member number, and we'll grab the contact person, the branch, and then let's go ahead to the policy number. So I'm not tagging these fields because by having the policy number, we already have the details of the policy for that particular member. And then we'll go ahead and highlight the rest of these fields. Oops. So pay attention to that field because I'm going to come back to this later in the demo. Okay, so we just have a few more fields left off to highlight. And I'll mark these as not available in the document. And then we've got things like the bank details. And for every time you drag and tag your fields, you can also see automatically straight away what type of data the AI Builder form processing model has picked up. So just bear with me, we are almost there. Oops, that's right. Okay, so then if I send, say, not available document, it's going to mark that as a tick, and then you could go ahead and tag all of your documents. So again, here's another model that I've trained earlier so that I could show you once you finish tagging those forms, what you would need to do to train it. So in this model, I've tagged all of the forms, and now when I click on next, it's going to give us a summary of what we've done with this model. So it's going to tell me that we're using the form processing AI builder model. We've got one collection. I've uploaded a minimum of 5 documents. It's going to show me all of my fields, all of my columns that are part of a table that I've defined. And then it's also going to show me the different checkboxes that I have defined as well. So then I can click on train. And what's going to happen behind the scenes is that this model is now training. And then when it's finished training, we can then publish it. And then we can use any of our published models in either Power Apps or in Power Automate. So this is going to take me back to the models view. And as you can see, it's currently training. And this is the one that we're going to be using in our automation today. And for any other AI builder models that I have not yet trained or published, it's going to show here. And on the right, you can see that it's got a status of draft. If there are any AI builder models that have been shared with me, it will show in this tab as well. So if you need to come back and train your model, this is where you would come to, or if you want to delete any, again, this is the same view that you would head to. So it lives under AI Builder, and the one you want to select is Models. So after this has trained, I'm going to show you what my cloud flow looks like in Power Automate that will automatically grab the data from a submitted claims form and then dump that data into Dataverse. So we'll just give this a few seconds. Okay, so it's now trained. And we can also perform a quick test to ensure that everything is okay. So in here, I can select quick test and I can upload a form from my device. So let's say we'll select PIM Technologies, and right now it's analyzing it. And then after it's been analyzed, we can then check out the data that it has automatically extracted. So now if I hover over it, it'll again show me the data that has been extracted as well as the confidence score of the AI builder model. So then let's go and have a look at this checkbox. So as you can see, when it is looking at a checkbox, it'll mark it as true if it detects that it has been ticked, or there's like an X on it as well. And again, if I show you with that other checkbox, once I hover over it, it'll show it as true. So now if we take a look at the table, it'll then give us the details. So when I've clicked on it, it's automatically identified the data that I've mapped to that column, as well as the column that I've purposely left blank. It knows that there's no data in there, so therefore it's not showing it. So again, this is really pretty cool tech because everything I've did was essentially just point and click. There is no development needed. And then you can also see the information that you've defined as part of your AI builder model. So once everything all looks good, then you can click on publish, and then you're pretty much good to go. So then it'll appear as published, and then you can start using your AI builder model either in Power Automate or in Power Apps. Now, when it hasn't been published, it's not going to allow you to create any automation or apps with it. So just keep that in mind. All right, so I'm going to now head over to my Cloudflow and Power Automate. This is essentially my Cloudflow. It's pretty straightforward. So the trigger is when a file is created in a folder. So we are using SharePoint as the document repository. So in SharePoint, ideally a claims assessor is going to come in here and upload the form. So then that will then trigger the automation in the Cloudflow. Then with this particular action, with this icon represents AI Builder, and this is the connector for AI Builder. So the AI model that I'm selecting in here is claims processing. I've defined what the form type is. So if I click on this drop down, we also have the ability to process information from images, but note it has to be in this format, so a JPEG or a PNG. And then this is pretty much asking, okay, well, where is that form that I need to process? And so you're referencing it from this particular action up here. Okay, so the next three actions are what we call a Dataverse list rows action. So remember how I talked about earlier, when you're looking at the data in your form, you need to consider what is the data that we already have on our members that exist today. And one of them is something like the member number. So if we know the member number, we know which business this claim is for. So in Dataverse, so this is my pretend policy administration system, I have a table that represents the members, and in here I'm saying go and grab the member where the member number equals the value that we've extracted from that insurance claim form. And I repeat that with two other tables. So the second table is the insurance policy row. So in the insurance policy table, we have a policy number that is associated to the member. And then the last one is the contact. So ideally in here, you would have more logic that allows you to map it to contact. But for today's demo, I'm keeping it simple. I'm simply just saying, go and grab the contact based on the email address value. But the other thing that you would check is to make sure that they are associated to the member organization up here. Okay, so then the bit that I want to talk about is formatting of dates. So if I go back to this one, and let me just upload a document in here again so I can explain it. So I purposely formatted a date in the form in the way that we as humans would follow when we complete a form. So if I just scroll the way down, so in my time zone, we follow the format of DD/MM/YYY. For you guys in the States, it would be opposite. It would be MM/DD/YYY. Now, when you extract the data from the form like this, it's correct. But when you go and submit it to a particular system, the system's going to deny it because it's going to be like, I don't know what this date format is. I don't recognize it. And that's because most systems that we work with follow the UTC time format. So this is a universal time format that pretty much all applications use. So the format that it needs to be in is YYY/MM/DD, and then you also need to provide like a timestamp. So essentially it needs to be in that type of timestamp. So for you as an organization, when you're working with your forms, you need to consider, how is the person who's filling in the form providing me the values? And do I need to do any formatting after the data has been automatically extracted? And 95% of the time, you're going to have to do that with date and time fields because of how systems work. They just accept date and time in the UTC format. So that's what we're doing in our Cloudflow. We're essentially tidying up the dates. And just to help me out, I'm going to head back to my slides so that I can explain them. So with that particular date value that I showed you, again, it's in the DD/MM format. The expression that I'm using looks like this. And I know it's a bit scary, but don't be scared. It really isn't. So this function of replace is pretty much saying, what do you want to replace in this value? So this big long string where you see outputs and the brackets and square brackets, this is pretty much saying, based on this value that the AI Builder form model has extracted, I would remove the slashes, and then I want to replace it with no spaces. So then what happens is that the data will then, let me just minimize this, will look like this. So it's removed the slashes. So then the next step that we're doing in this action is now we're going to format it in a way that the application will accept. So in other words, we need to have it in this format. So in this expression, I'm pretty much inserting that same format. So I've got the hyphens in here, and then I've got like the substring expression here. So you're probably thinking, okay, what is that substring E? I don't understand. So if I just expand this notepad and just show this to you, we're using the function of substring. So basically, when we look at this, it has a number sequence. So 02, which is the 2nd of October, it's going to start with 0, and then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So to get the year, we're pretty much saying start from the 5th sequence, which is 4, and then only grab the next 4 characters. And then for the month, we're pretty much doing the same thing. So in this expression in here, I'm saying start from 2 and grab only the next 2 characters. And then for the day, I'm saying only grab the characters from 0 and the next 2. So essentially, what this expression is doing underneath in here is it's doing this. So it's just grabbing the characters in that string based on a particular starting point. So that's what the substring is doing. Then we have this convert time zone. So as I mentioned, all applications follow UTC. And so what we're doing is we're converting a local time to UTC, because if you store it as is, when it gets inserted into a system and that system is using UTC, it's going to store it as whatever the equivalent value is. And so it might appear incorrectly to the end user. And so that's why we do conversions. So I hope that made sense. I go into detail about this in one of my episodes in my YouTube channel. So you can take a look at my YouTube channel where I go into that in more detail. And then we have the add new insurance claim row action from Dataverse. So this looks like a bit of a long action, but it's honestly straightforward. And I'm going to use my slides again to help explain. So with the account name, if I select this and we have a look at the values that you could reference from the AI Builder connector earlier up, let me just type it in. You're going to see a bunch of fields that appear, and you might be like, oh, this seems like a lot. I don't know which field to select. Basically, look for the one that says value. So in other words, the name of the field that you've defined, and then it should have an appended string of value. So always look for account name value, and that's the one that you want to select. If you select things like the account number field type, that is essentially the field type that has been defined in the model. So in other words, this is a field. If this was a checkbox, it would say checkbox. And then if it was a table column, then it would say, I think, table column or a table. But the one that you always want to select is the one where you see value. So that's pretty straightforward. Then we have another expression here where, again, I'm performing a replace. So let me just head back to my slides so that you can understand why we're doing that. So if you take a look at the value that the AI Builder has extracted, you can see that there's spaces in here. Now, if you were to put that in your target system, it's going to include the spaces, and we don't want that, right? So that's why we use another expression in here. So we're saying remove the spaces and then replace it with no space, so that when it goes into the target system, it accepts the value as how it should be. In other words, there's no spaces. And the reason why it's picking up spaces is because the form has these boxes to help the person filling in the form know that they need to separate the account number out. And there, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but as I mentioned, when you're working with extracting the data automatically, you need to take a closer look at that data that it has identified and recognized. And if there's any characters in there that you know shouldn't be in there, then you have to do some formatting within your Cloudflow to remove those extra characters. So that's what that expression is doing. And then we have the coalesce function in here. So again, I'm going to go back to my slides. So the reason why we use a coalesce function is it's to take care of null or blank values. If we didn't use a coalesce function, then the Cloudflow fails because it's expecting a value. But in the scenario where that value is not provided, you need to make sure that the Cloudflow continues to run. And so that's why we use a coalesce function. Then we have this convert time zone action. And again, you're probably thinking, oh, what does this convert times action do and why do I need it? So again, with every application that we use, it tends to expect the value in a particular format. So with my claim date, because it's in the correct format already, so if I just go back here, oh no, I just lost it, sorry. It's already in the YY/MM/DD. So all I'm doing is I'm converting it as well as adding a time value. And so that's so that the application system can accept the date value in the format it needs to be in, as well as it recognizes it in UTC, so that if the application is being viewed by a user, so let's say in New Zealand, so where I am, I see that date and time correctly. Otherwise, if the application is being viewed by someone in, let's say, Sydney, they would be seeing it as 2 hours behind because it's been logged in my time of New Zealand. Okay. So then the last expression that I do want to go through is how to handle checkboxes. So again, I'm going to head back to my slides so that I can explain this. So let me just do this. Okay. So in terms of the checkbox, again, in this particular form, they've provided 2 checkboxes, one for yes, one for no. Now, when I was doing the automation, I decided, well, I don't want to really look at both of those checkboxes. I'm just only going to look at my yes checkbox. And if it's true, it means that I know that this field has been marked as yes. Otherwise, if it is blank, so in other words, if there's no tick in there, then that means that this particular field means no. So to have a look at the expression, this is what it looks like. We're using the if function. And again, all of this long string that you're seeing is just a reference to this field. And then we're saying if the value that's recognized by the AI Builder form model is true, then we want to keep it as true. Otherwise, if it's not true, so in other words, it equals false, we're going to keep it as false. So this is one way of working with checkboxes in your AI Builder model. The other way of doing is using a condition. So in other words, if this field equals yes, then you want something else to happen. Otherwise, if this field equals no, then you need something else to happen. And so you can use what we call the condition block. So in the condition block, you can define a yes and a no path. So that's another way of using checkboxes when you're working with automation in Power Automate. Okay, so, it looks like I have another one to explain. Yes, okay. So let me go back to my Cloudflow. So the last one is linking it to a particular member, an insurance policy, or even a contact. Where's my contact? Oh, I left that blank. Oops, sorry. They should be referenced. But in here is where I'm basically linking my insurance claim form to a particular member. So if I head back to my slides and I just hit play. So in this particular action of list member row, because we're using what we call the list row action, it means that it's going to grab all the records that it can find based on the the query that I provided. So in here, if you think back to what I showed you earlier, I was saying only grab me the member where the member number equals the value that has been extracted from the AI builder model. And when you're working with list rows, in your list rows, you're going to have what we call more than one record. And that's usually done in what we call an array. And when you're looking at the response in Cloud Flows, you're going to see the square bracket. And so if you are working with list rows, there is some additional step that you need to do where you have to use a function of first. And the reason why we do that is so that it knows that it only needs to retrieve the first row in that response, and it's only ever going to reference the account ID from that first row. Again, I have a blog post that explains all of this, so if you want to do some additional learning, you can go ahead and check that out. And then the last thing that we're doing in the Cloudflow is handling the tables. So for every table that exists in the form, we want to create a new row in a different table called claims history. And again, we're using the coalesce function, and then we're mapping it back to that insurance claim that we've created in this particular connector. So that is pretty much the automation. And I know it's a lot to take in, given that the session is only 1 hour. If you do have any questions, we're going to talk about it soon. So just keep waiting. So now we're going to see this in action. I'm going to upload my claim form that I showed you earlier into SharePoint. And if we head back to my Cloudflow, we are going to see this run eventually. So you can see that I've been doing some testing and making sure that it fails when it's supposed to fail. So that was me testing with the date values. Okay, so let's just give this a few seconds. And I'll go to my insurance claims. So that's one that I tested with previously, so it's not that one. But eventually it will appear. Okay, so while that's loading, let me just show you a previous run. And I'll show you what the AI Builder connector does in terms of automatically extracting that data. So here you can see that this claims history is to do with the table. And as I scroll down, you can see that it's identified the claim history columns. So those were the columns that I had defined. And where you see claims history entries is where it actually grabs the values from. So you can see that in this first row, the value was 1.5 million. Oh, wow. And then there'll be another row where it's got more data, sorry. So this one, I just scroll up. Oh, it's okay. Okay, I'll go to a different field. So then we've got things like the reason. So the reason is the field that I mapped in terms of the nature of the claim. And then it'll give you things like the confidence score. And then if I scroll back up, we should see the reason value. So these are the ones that I mentioned earlier. This is the field that you want to reference whenever you're using your AI builder model in terms of creating that new record, which is this one. So in here, this is where I've said, go and create the insurance claim based on all of the information that I provided you. And so the one that I do want to show you is in my checkbox. So with this one, this is my declaration accepted. I've set it to true. So when we have a look at the claim next, we're going to see that. So let me just check that the flow has succeeded. Just bear with me. Okay, we can see that it finished processing. So now if I go back to my model-driven app and we click refresh, we should see 4 rows. And the one that has been created is this one, based on the timestamp. So now when we open it, we can see that the claim form has successfully created. So we can see that it's automatically mapped it to that member. So again, that was based on the member number. It's mapped it to that insurance policy. And because, again, we already have the details of the member's insurance policy. So let me just show you what it looks like. It looks like this. We don't necessarily need to map or tag the data that's been provided by the member in the form, because we already know those details. So that's what I said, or that's what I meant by earlier. If you already have that information from your member, then technically you don't need to go through it again when you're doing the automation of extracting the claims information from that form. And then here's my checkboxes. So we can see that it's been marked as yes. And then we can also see the dates. So if this did have a timestamp, I would be seeing it in my local time. And then for the actual tables, the claims history table, we could see that it's gone and created that actual row in my claims history table. And then it's also mapped it back to that insurance claim that was created as part of the step. One second, let me just load this as part of this step. So we said, hey, create the claims history row for every row that you've detected in that table that I've defined in my claims form, and then map it back to the insurance claim. So that's pretty much it in terms of how you can use AI Builder to do some automation. And again, I want to stress that it was simply a point and click experience to train and detect that information from those forms. And then when you use it in something like Cloud Flows or in Power Apps, that's where you can do some further data formatting, as in like tidying up what the format should be in before it goes into your target application system. So I'm going to head back to my slides and we'll just finish up. So in terms of the learning material on how you can get started. So the first one is Microsoft Learn. I highly recommend Microsoft Learn. There's really good content out there. So again, I've got a QR code here, so just grab out your phone and scan it. And then if you filter it to AI Builder, it's going to show you all the modules that are available, and then you can go ahead and select this one. For the second one, they do have labs that you can follow and learn from. So I've provided, again, a QR code up here that you can scan on your phone and get started. For things like wanting to learn how to do the table automation, there is a person called Steve Winward who's in the Microsoft team. I think it's based in the West Coast of the United States. He has a YouTube channel. He's already done a demo on how you can get started with AI Builder and form processing, specifically with processing tables. I've also done a webinar with XR Vision where I talk about another document automation tool that is available called the Document Automation Toolkit. So you could go and check that out. Otherwise, yeah, thank you for listening. I hope I didn't ramble on and that you made sense of what I was showing you today. I think AI Builder is really cool tech, and to be able to extend it beyond its capability using Power Automate or Power Apps is truly amazing. So yeah, I'm going to open up the floor to questions. Come off mute. If you want to come on camera, that's cool. Otherwise, I'll take a look at the chat.
Yeah, we didn't have many questions. I put one comment myself saying when you ran the automation first time, that at that time two interns had lost their jobs.
Oh no.
Now this is really cool. It's really cool. I
Yeah.
think the first time I saw the forms automation was from Eric Solvay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know I was already pretty stoked, but this is very nice. You know, the step-by-step lesson is really good. Let's see if anybody else wants to maybe unmute themselves and pose the questions directly.
Well,
Is there anyone who has questions, concerns, or I have one comment to make, Eliza, but it has nothing to do with AI. It's just the Dataverse date behavior.
Yeah.
I wanted to, let's see if I can share my screen real quick, just to talk
Okay.
about it. I mean, Dataverse always stores the dates in UTC, but then
Yes.
depending on how you have the date behavior set up, you see difference when you expose the date, and that's what Eliza was talking about. So if you have a field that is set up to use user local when surfacing the data, you have to be careful how you feed the data into that field through Power Automate. And that's this point here. Of course, if the field behavior is to be set up as time zone independent, then the value that you put in is always the value that you see on the screen.
Yeah.
So it's important to know not only to convert from UTC and such, but the behavior of the date field in the Dataverse. Because if you're looking at time zone independent and you're reading data from a form, converting it to UTC, by the time that you put it on the field that's time zone independent, you're gonna have problems as well. So know the behavior of the field before you play with conversions. Um, yeah, that's I think that's all I've got.
Yeah, thanks, Victor. Yeah, essentially what Victor said is correct. And if I just share my screen again, so what it means by the user local time, this is just for those who aren't familiar with Dataverse. Let me just try exit out of my PowerPoint, and I'll head back to Dataverse. And so here's my model-driven app. So in your personalization settings, so you just click on the cogwheel. So this is something that every user can define themselves. There's this thing, or a field, not thing, a field in here called time zone. And in this field is where I can define my local time. So an example that I used earlier, if you have a user that's based in Australia, so let's say Sydney, then they would go ahead and select GMT 10, so that every date field that they come across in their time zone, they can see it as Sydney. And then you can go one extra step by changing the different formatting of the dates as well. So if I now select the date tab, I can change the look and feel of how I want my dates to be. So this is what we call changes within the end user interface level, as well as user local time settings. But then underneath the hood, so at the system level, which is a magical place that you and I can't see, the dates will be stored as UTC. So that's what I meant earlier, where if you just store the date as is, so let's say 9 a.m. in UTC, sorry, in yeah, 9 a.m. in New Zealand time, it's going to store the equivalent in Dataverse as UTC. So if there is a date time format in there, and you don't do the conversion, it's not going to make sense to someone viewing it locally, because it might appear as, let's say, 11 p.m. minus 1 day. So that's why the time zone conversion thing is something to be conscious about when you're working with those different date time behaviors that Victor mentioned. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if you when you're setting up your columns, or if you're using an existing column in the
Yeah.
Dataverse, the place you want to look at is this particular behavior area. If you
Yeah.
have it set up as time zone independent, then whatever value that you're pushing through your automate will be stored exactly as you see it. So, and it's almost the reverse effect of the UTC conversion. If time is at noon, for
Yeah.
example, and field is time zone independent, and you convert it to UTC, you are changing the date, but the field does not expect that change. So conversion will make sense only if your data field is set up as user local,
Yeah.
your time field as user local, essentially. In other
Well,
words, if you field is time zone independent, you don't need to convert to UTC on the on the flow. If it is user local, then you convert it.
yeah.
Cool.
Date times, it's such a tricky thing, but thankfully we have the tech now to to help us get it
It
right.
is. No, it is.
Yeah.
It's,
Oh, I'm sad I
All
didn't get to say hi to the person called Jan. He joined all the way from the Czech Republic, so that was really nice. But thank you again so much, heroes, for joining us today. And make sure you join the following sessions because I believe Kent Weir is up next.
Yes,
So if you don't
yes,
know who
yes.
Kent Weir is a PM in the Paracat team, and he's going to be going through RPA, so robotic process automation. So you should definitely tune in for that. He's
Oh,
really cool.
yes. So we'll continue next week. And Kent lives here in Calgary, so we get to meet him face to face sometime.
Yay!
It's been a while. It's been a while, but we'll try to connect as
Yeah.
soon as possible. All right, everyone. Well, Elaiza, thank you so much.
Thank
Depending on
you.
what folks say here, we might do session 2 of Power Automate. We'll never know. We'll see if we have enough of a crowd to continue maybe on another session. For sure, you'd be there. No
Yeah.
no question, unless you're not available. But if you are, it'd be great to have you again. Everybody, thank you. Enjoy your Thursday, whatever you are. I think it's Friday already for you, Elaiza. Enjoy your Friday
Yes, it
and
is.
weekend, and take care. Thank you, my friend. Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you all.
Talk.
Bye. Bye, heroes.
Bye, guys.
Bye.